Hi everybody. Merry Basemess. Today we're going to be reacting to this video that I watched last night. You don't know that I've seen it already, but I really had some thoughts on it that I wanted to give. And this video was called "The Monster I Became on Hormones." So I'm going to record it in 3, 2, 1.
This channel right fucking here, this is my side of the story. This is my testimony to the universe.
His testimony.
No matter what happens or where I go, or what happens to me, this is always going to be here as my solidified testimony.
It's a very solid testimony.
As my little blip in the history of the world that tells my story, and for those who may relate to it, or find it helpful because they find some of themselves in it or someone they know in it. This is what it's for.
This is what it's for.
To create a bunch of understanding. Because I'm a weirdo, but weirdos are your neighbors. And so maybe you might come to understand your neighbors who are a little bit like me. Or maybe you're that neighbor who's not being understood and you can show them these videos. But I was caught up in a web of lies for the longest time. For as much as I pride myself on authenticity and genuinity, and throughout my channel's history, I've put a lot of effort in maintaining those principles, in aspiring to those ideals. I've slipped as far as my personal life is concerned. In particular, I slipped in the realm of my gender identity. And in that video that I made declaring that I am not transgender, that I am in fact non-binary and use any all pronouns.
He's not transgender.
I also stated that I could not...
He's saying that he was not transgender, he was just non-binary. I actually relate to this. In the start of my transition, I also said that, you know, I really prefer just being non-binary. I just want to be a person instead of like a woman, you know? I don't want to be a binary trans. I want to be a person. I just want to be an entity. I just want to be an existence. Okay. And
fight a lie with more lies. That rather I had to come to the truth and lay the truth bare to all who may hear it, and they can take or leave whatever they'd like from it.
Hey, sweetie.
And there was a lot of emotion and power behind that sentiment, simply because of how dishonest living as a transgender woman was for me to experience. Like, I struggled to leave my house or to talk to anyone, even friends that I had online.
I also relate to this. I do struggle to leave my house sometimes. I actually have a video talking about how I'm afraid to leave my house because I'm like scared of people. I like project all these like negative things into the minds of other people, and I'm like, no, they hate me because of who I am. Oh, if they know I'm trans, they're gonna kill me. Oh, all this other dumb shit. And like, I know there's a lot of politicians that are saying stuff like that, but the average person on the street really doesn't give a fuck. That doesn't make it better for me. Y'all, look at this bug. It's a little red spider thing. They struggle to leave their house and they feel inauthentic. Okay, we'll keep
the moment that I started identifying as a trans woman, let alone taking hormones, you know, I could be speaking.
And things also got worse upon identification of like, I'm transgender, not even just hormones. For this person. I can actually relate to that as well. When I started transitioning and I wasn't on hormones yet, I was really struggling. I was drinking a lot. I was smoking a lot. I actually smoked and drank a ton through the beginning of my transition. And I've quit drinking in the more recent history. But I was also leaning into like drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism for like the dissonance that I was feeling between who I was saying I was, who I was embodying, and also like just all the other shit that comes along with like a person. I don't know.
With this exact same intonation, not having done voice training and so on, but because I had changed my identity, I knew that on the other end, people were expecting something of me. And because people were expecting something of me, I had to adhere to those expectations. I had to present myself like the person they thought I was. And that put an immense amount
I
of
relate
pressure.
to this as well. I feel like when I came out as trans, I started feeling all this like pressure to be more feminine or like to act in this certain way that was like inauthentic, and I did actually. And I remember my girlfriend at the time had even said like, "Oh, you've become a whole different person," and like when I look back, I realized that like I did become a different person because I was like, "Oh, I need to be this person and not that person," and I'm not diagnosed with one, so don't say it in the comments, but I think I might have a cluster B. And one of the things that's common with a lot of cluster Bs is this idea of splitting, which is like a mental detachment. It's black or white. You're mentally detaching. And I think I split on the old version of myself and everything that included. All the good and all the bad of my old self. I said, I don't want any of this. I'm starting over. So I also felt a lot of this like weird pressure to like be somebody. But I was like, who the fuck am I? What do I do?
Pressure onto me because I was not being expected to be who I am. I was being expected to be the person I said I was. And so,
Pause. I was not expected to be the person who I am. I was expected to be the person who I said I was. That one hit deep. Because often I feel the same way. Like I will go to do something and I'll be like, oh, that's not right. That's not right for me to do. Like that's not what I would do. Like me as this version of myself. But then it's like, wait, it is though. Like that's what is authentic. That's what I want to do. That is like what I'm going to do. But then like my brain just gives me a lot of shit for it. Okay, I'll keep playing.
I
Sorry.
didn't just feel uncomfortable or, dare I say, dysphoric in my physical interactions with people who were now deeming me to be female and treating me as such, or at least making.
Pause. So he's talking about how like he was feeling dysphoric at the fact that people were treating him as a trans woman, and I actually get super dysphoric by this as well. Like when I know that I'm clogged, it is so dysphoria inducing. Um, or like when people don't know that I'm trans and they're treating me like I'm not trans, that's also dysphoria inducing because then I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm like lying to you because if you find something out, you're gonna feel differently. But that's like my people pleaserness, trying to be like, oh, people are going to be displeased if I'm like this, so I shouldn't be like this, but I am like this, so now I have to be like this. Otherwise, they're going to be displeased when they realize that I'm not actually this thing that I thought I was. Anyways, I don't know.
Making overtures in that direction. This was also the case in my internet friendships, and whenever the subject would come up or something pertaining to the subject, I had to respond with grand and fanciful narratives that supported the idea that I was this thing that I claimed that I was, regardless of how true any of those
Oh,
things
so we still
actually
have
were.
1 second. Everything's all right. I'm applying for jobs technically because I need money and I don't have any, and I'm gonna lose my phone in like 3 days, I think. So, YOLO. If you want to see you can find it on the internet.
More often than not, they were just convoluted narratives that took things that were true, kind of screwed around with them, looked at them from the right angle, and omitted everything else that did not directly contribute to the narrative that I was attempting to weave.
So this person, they're talking about the idea of like online identities and like how those also feel like fictitiously, and like how there's like this weird like masking pressure, I guess. But they also are talking about the idea of like weaving together narratives or like looking at your facts, your history, your truth in a way that conforms to like a specific story. And in this case, they're talking about the idea that like they thought they were trans, and then all of a sudden, all these things in their past started clicking together that like made sense why they're trans. Like they were able to look at their own existing narrative through a framework that helped them see it as trans. Is what how I read this.
And in so doing, I created a person, but that person was not me.
And in doing that, they created a person, but the person wasn't them. It was this other mask that they built.
And of course, this is going to be a viscerally alienating experience to undertake because you are not acting out yourself, you are method acting the character that you've designed. You know, I don't have to act when I'm speaking to my best friend, no thank you.
I don't have to act when I'm speaking to my best friend. You know, this isn't pretending. This is like method acting, is what this person says. And I do agree to an extent. I think that earlier, especially earlier in your transition, as you don't really have an idea of what it means to be this like identity that you have in mind, you're relying on what you know, right? And like for a lot of people, that's going to be building a mask and like playing a character until you're good enough to do it, right? Like that's why method actors literally stay in character for the entire time. Well, some of them do. Stay in character for the entire time they're shooting a movie or show, because it helps them stay in character and helps them become that person, right? And like that's the same thing people do, is they have to like become this person, because on the inside they're saying like, I don't like who I am on the outside, right? I need to change who I am on the outside. Who do I change it to? I want to change it to this picture that I'm building. And that is the answer that I want to do. That's what they try. Anyways, sorry, I'm going to keep mine.
Or my significant other and soon-to-be wife, Sophie.
Oh, he also talks about how, like, I keep saying he, but I don't know the pronouns of this individual, actually. They don't have any pronouns. They do mention that they go by any all in here, but anyways. They talk about how they don't feel like they're being inauthentic when they talk to their best friend or when they talk to like a girlfriend, fiance. They feel real, and I understand that as well. I feel like the version of me that's real changes because I am just the summation of everything inside. So as I expand these new like character sets, as I expand these new costume sets into other realities, me also becomes part of that. And like it's going to change how you were before and how you were after, because you are adding new things to this character set.
Yeah.
There's 20 minutes
I
left. I
simply
gotta shut
say
up.
what comes to my mind, because there's no need for me to follow up on a web of lies that I've carefully constructed or not so carefully constructed. I don't need to worry about contradicting something I've said prior and then lying and lying and lying and lying in order to keep the lie consistent. There isn't a whole person that I've structured. Um, it's just me. And so I can respond with exactly what's on my mind or exactly what's always been on my mind. And that's such a thoroughly liberating experience for me because my whole life I felt like I could not do that. When I was growing up, I often got in trouble for things that I did not do. But if I told the truth, rarely was it enough for my parents or the authority figures around me. So I had to create some lies in order to cover that up. But I also got in trouble for things I did do, and the punishments that I feared, in retrospect now, are not punishments that I deserved. Like, of course, there should have been some kind of retribution or reprimanding for the bad behavior that I was engaging in. It should have been discouraged, but the response was disproportionate. And so, because I feared that disproportionate response, I learned how to lie really quickly. And I mean
Okay.
fast.
So he's talking. Well, they're talking about coming from a background that's like they got in trouble a lot when they were a kid for lying, but also not lying. Just they got in trouble a lot, and like they learned how to lie very quickly and like build lies into their personality. And they talk about how they never really had the opportunity to tell the truth when they were young. And I actually relate to this a lot because like when I was young, I wasn't allowed to be a more effeminate person mentally. That was banned. That was like bad. People would make bad comments about it. They would like make fun of it, right? So like at this point, I have been crafted by all of the people who told me I couldn't act in other ways. I've been crafted by the people that said, "Don't be a faggot. Don't be a tranny," right? And that is who my self became. But I'm still on the inside. Remember, I'm just the amalgamation. So they drug me over here, but I'm still here. Like I'm still here. I'm just way drug over there because they've been pulling me all my life. Anyways, I relate a lot to what this person says, but I don't think that like I'm lying by being trans. I think I'm just trying to explore more of my identity.
I learned how to respond as a person I wasn't, and to be consistent with the narrative of that person
And
that I
then he goes on to talk about like the idea of how to respond as a person you're not. And I also learned how to do this. I learned how to be people that I wasn't in order to satisfy those around me. This is part of the like people pleasery stuff that I mentioned earlier.
wasn't. Like, in the blink of an eye, to where it just sounded like I was that person.
It just sounded like I was that
And
person.
then if you look at the very collectivistic, tightly knit, southern rural community that I lived in, evangelical community that I lived in,
evangelical
there was an
community.
even bigger.
Those Christian brainworms be hella bad. Trust me, I know. I had some religious brainworms in me as well, but them shits are bad.
Precedent for conforming. You know, like there was a lot of pressure put on you to do that.
And in communities like that, there is a lot of pressure for you to conform to Christianity, for you to conform to this idea of being a man, if that's what you're supposed to do, of you being who you're told to be because God's will or whatever.
Is there a mouse there? Yeah, there might be. I don't know where the mice are in here. In that community, you know, I was forced to, just for the sake of safety, portray myself a certain way. Now, I've always had...
In communities like that, you do have to like stay safe, right? You have to make sure that you are staying alive, and often people will repress their identities in many regards, both like gay and trans, and even not things like that. Even things like you want a tattoo, you want piercings, right? Like you can get outcasted for really dumb shit because you aren't conforming, and these groups require that you conform. Sometimes.
Had firmly anti-authoritarian intuitions and instincts, so a lot of the time I bucked that trend, and it felt really good every time that I did. But for the sake of practicality, much of the time I did not. And
that's a major mood too. This person talks about how they have an anti-authoritarian trend, and personally, I think I'm a PDA type autistic, pathological demand avoidance. So when expectations get placed, I don't like them. That also makes me extremely anti-authoritarian. I can't speak for this individual. I would make a guess that they probably likely have some flavor of neurospiciness, whether that's ADHD, autism, or something else. But well, plus trauma, definitely plus trauma. But I think what I'm trying to say is that like
only further instilled this pattern of behavior in me. To the times that I did, but for the sake of practicality, much of the time I did not.
I also developed a lot of actions that were anti-authoritarian while also conforming to most of the authority, right? So like, for example, I sold things that are not the most legal, right? That is something I did. And I felt like a badass for that, right? Like, oh, I'm anti-authority, I'm doing this thing, I'm on top of the world. But I was also listening to the curfews that were set in place. I was also like,
the whole ass boy.
I did conform to a lot of the authority and also bucked it in my own ways. So I relate a lot to this.
That only further instilled this pattern of behavior in me, to the point where like I became like the George Santos of life. Like I would just lie about stuff that I did not have to lie about.
I also
that was
lie
totally
all the time.
irrelevant. You know
Lied
how
all the time.
that New York congressman, when they found out that he had lied about his entire life story, there were a bunch of interviews he did where he lied about like working with kids or being a volleyball star, like totally inconsequential information on his resume that you would think did absolutely nothing to affect his stand.
For a long time in my childhood, especially when I was like still a guy, I would lie about everything, or I would exaggerate, I would create hyperbole. It was stretching the truth, very stretchy sometimes, rather than directly lying. But looking back, I was just lying to people. I was lying to people all the time. I was just, I don't know. I was being the person that I was trained to be, but the person I was trained to be was a liar, and this person who can wear masks and isn't... I was being trained to be a person that wasn't real, right? I was being trained to be an idea.
Standing in the election. He lied about those things anyway, really minute details. I did that. I did that kind of thing growing up, and unfortunately that behavior continued on into my adulthood, even my not so not so distant past. And so, I was identifying as this transgender person, after being pressured and pressured and pressured by these trans girls that I was friends with that I was attracted to.
After being pressured and pressured and pressured. I don't know if that is how that happened. I would love to talk to this person and like interview them and just see what actually happened, but I could see there being pressure from trans women and being like, come on, take estrogen, blah, blah. Because for a lot of trans women, we wish that people would have told us to take estrogen, but I do understand the like frustration if that happened and you were like, I'm not even trans, bro.
Um, and this general confusion about my identity due to the place where I grew up, which
Yeah.
had heavily
It sounds like
conformist,
there's a ton of
centralistic
trauma.
concept.
There's a ton of trauma in this person's childhood. Also, like, yeah, I get it. Growing up there probably would make it difficult to accept a lot of these things, but also it's going to make it difficult to say no, right? Because you've been taught how to be a conformist your whole life because of the people that want you to conform to the religion. Yeah.
Of gender imposed on you, which led me to think that I couldn't just be a multifaceted male. That if I wanted to have that range of emotions, I had to be female.
That is frustrating for me too. This idea that like men aren't this way, women are this way, because like I have said I don't know if I would be trans if gender roles were not as strict as they are, or if they weren't for me when I was growing up as strict as they were. Because I don't know, like, would I have been happy being a gender non-conforming man, or even like just like a non-binary individual, if I didn't feel so like stuck in the idea of, oh, a man is this way and like that's it, right? I don't know. I don't know.
It was the perfect storm for me to have some confusion about myself, and then when I actually tried to live out that identity and realized just how viscerally I disliked living as that, um, I kept lying and saying that I was that because I knew there were a number of benefits I could have, that I could convince some lonely incel to date me and basically take care of me so I could be a NEET forever, and um, I knew that there were certain economic and social benefits that came from being that kind of person on the internet. And I also
I kind of relate to this. Sometimes I really do dislike being trans. I dislike the feeling of like all these other expectations, the same expectation, or not the same. They're different expectations than when I was presenting as a guy, but like the idea that like there are expectations with my identity, and not knowing how my identity is being perceived makes it really difficult for me sometimes to be like, who am I here, right? Like, do you see me as a woman? Do you see me as a tranny? Do you see me as a man? Like, what do you see me as?
so was frankly too ashamed to basically come out and say, hey guys, I'm not actually this thing, I was wrong, because of how intense the pressure was from those trans friends that I had, and just about everybody else that I knew who wasn't even trans.
Yeah, I feel that too. If I ever was going to detransition, I feel like coming out as detrans would be really difficult for me because I've gone through so much effort to get people to recognize me this way, and I've lost so much out of my relation. Or like becoming trans made me lose so much. I've lost so much family. I've lost like I don't know. I've lost a lot from transitioning. Um and like I don't know. It would suck to detrans and realize that I've still lost all of them because now I know that they aren't shit. But also, I lose everybody that I have now. Maybe I probably wouldn't lose everybody that I have now because surprisingly, trans people are more cool with detrans people than most people make it out to be. But anyways,
So needless to say, I was very ashamed.
I do feel a lot of
So
shame
I
as well.
continue lying about my identity and living out this person that by that point I already knew I didn't want to be, because even just being called that feminine name that I had, Lily, and having people treat me as though I was a woman caused so much discomfort in me. It caused me to be silent, it caused me to be anxious, it caused me to just feel like disgusted. Like I feel like this is the way that actual transgender people feel all the time when they're misgendered. You take a trans woman, for example, when they get dead named or treated like a guy, I feel like they must feel exactly how I felt when people were treating me like I was a woman.
Oh, there's tits
And so that's
everywhere.
what gender dysphoria is. And people who are cis or people who are, gender non-conforming in other ways, they can have it too. It's just this
I
disconnect.
might relate with that. I feel like I actually get dysphoric sometimes when I'm perceived as like as a female. As weird as that sounds, because it's like I said earlier. I don't know how you're perceiving me, so then I'm afraid that like, one, you're placating me, or two, you're going to realize I'm trans and then get all weird. Because that's happened before. I've had guys that like I talk to, and like before they know I'm trans, they'll like send me money. They want to see me. They want to talk about a life. They want to go on a vacation. And as soon as they know I'm trans, they don't want to talk to me anymore, or like their behavior just changes. Like it's just not the same. I kind of feel just weird all the time because of other people's reactions. I don't know.
With how one is perceived and treated based on the affectations that they present, that inside they feel as though different affectations should be ascribed to them. And so, that was a negative experience. Really, really negative. And it made me feel like I wasn't even like a person to the people around me. Like,
I feel like
none of
that
my
too.
friendships were even real.
I feel like this too sometimes. I feel like nothing, like the dynamics I have with people aren't really real. Well, sometimes. I'm going to explain too. In the one hand, I feel like when I'm presenting to people, they don't know my full circle, right? Like, I'm over here, I'm also over here. People aren't seeing all of that. They're only seeing what I'm showing them, right? They're only seeing a snapshot. But then on the other hand, that is what it means to like know somebody, right? Like you know their snapshot over time. You're building their snapshot over time. You learn who they are, and then you like keep learning about them. So like it kind of does feel fake, but on the other hand, it's not super fake. I'm just new. Like I'm a new person. If you think of my transition as like a rebirth, like if I'm a phoenix, I'm like 2 years old. Not even. I'm like barely 2 years old. Like I'm an infant. I'm a baby. I'm just a baby. The idea that I feel weird makes sense because like, how many kids do you know that feel comfortable with themselves? You know, that's what I got.
Because none of them knew who I was. And it led me to feel so isolated from everyone, like I was completely alone. In my last video, called Not a Creator But a Person, I ended it by saying that, I've always felt kind of like an island, kind of on my own. But I meant that in a positive, like, individualistic way in that video. Um, Obviously, you're gonna want some people in your orbit that you can rely on and that, you know, they can rely on you.
Yeah.
At this time, I felt like I was just totally in the dark. Like, no one was in my corner because nobody even knew. Like, they didn't even have a semblance of who I was.
They don't have this
That,
full
like,
picture.
not even the faintest idea.
I kind of relate to that too. I feel really alone since transitioning. I find it hard to make friends because I feel like, oh, you're not gonna like me. Like, I don't know. I also live in like a rural area as well. So I can relate to what they were saying of like growing up in a rural area and like, I don't know. It's just hard to feel comfy, and that's probably my own fault. But like,
Faintest idea.
I don't know, bestie.
But I was every day getting up and performing this person. And it was painful. It was really painful. Um, and I ended up drinking every single day to deal with the pain of performing this person without even being on hormones, by the way. So this was before HRT. HRT just confirmed my opinion that I didn't want to be that person. I started drinking all the time, and I started, doing the drugs more because, like, I would jump into calls with my then boyfriend, and he would treat me feminine and all this stuff. And I'd have to do this whole song and dance, acting like the person that he thought I was, because I thought, well, I guess this is who I'm stuck being, and at least if I do this whole song and dance with this guy, then maybe I can get a visa and live in Germany.
So I got a temporary partner. Well, God, that sounds weird, but I had a temporary, like a short-term partner, and I'm saying like temporary because I don't know how they would consider it, but like we talked for a couple months, and I felt a similar way when I was in a relationship with them. I felt very awkward. I was like, I don't know how to act. I don't know how to be a girlfriend in a woman love woman way, right? Like, I just know how to be like a shitty guy. I just know how to be a shitty man. Um, and also, when people are like misandrists, I've noticed that there are like a lot of misandrists in the trans community and things, or just like in like communities online. And like, misandry is kind of difficult for me to deal with. And like, I think that's because I still do relate to a lot of the aspects of like men, maybe, or like a lot of the misandry things are like the shitty socializations. I don't know. I just have a lot of empathy, I think, for people that live in a current existence of like the one that I lived in the past. I'm gonna keep playing because we're at like 40 minutes of video, and I think we still have a third of it left.
And also, part of me did genuinely love him. Part of me, like, really liked what he had going on as a person. And I was no doubt attracted to him because I'm bisexual. But I had so many times when I just desperately wished this person could love me for being a male. That I could have just been in a healthy gay relationship with that guy.
I don't think I've ever thought that. There are times where I've thought like I wish I could just be in a straight relationship. Like when I came out, because I was with a girlfriend when I started transitioning. Like when I came out, don't bump that. When I came out and then she didn't like me anymore, and then I started getting all weird because I was trying to figure out how to be a person again. And yeah. Anyways, kind of wish I could have just been a straight guy then. But YOLO. I don't think I've really wanted to be a straight guy in any other relationship. That's just the only role I know how to fill in relationships. And when I date women, that is the role that I find myself taking, right? Because, like, I've dated women before. I have done that. Anyways.
I think if I hadn't lied so much all the time, maybe that relationship could have actually been happy or normal. But instead, because I was lying so much and portraying myself like someone I wasn't, I I ended up just treating him in the most despicable way possible. And I say I've forgiven myself for that, but to be honest, like I still feel really bad for being so deceptive because that guy wasn't a bad guy. I mean, he did some pretty bad things to me, but you can almost understand it given the bad things that I was doing.
And I feel the same way, TBH. Like, when I talk about the girlfriend that I was with when I started transitioning, I feel the same way. Like, she did bad things to me, but I was also doing bad things to her. And, like, I don't know. For a long time, I held a lot of resentment because watch out. I don't know. I give myself a lot of leeway, right? But when I really look at it, I'm fucked up. Like, I'm not a good person to be in a relationship with. So, like, I don't blame her.
Doing. Not to say two wrongs makes
Plus,
a
I
right.
did change. I changed who I became. I went from one person
It's
to another.
understandable. And so I feel a lot of pain when I recall that whole arc and time in my life. Just the sheer amount of deception that existed in that time. Because I truly felt like I was alone.
I feel like I've had more deception in my before times because while me transitioning is confusing for everybody, right? Myself included. It's confusing for everybody. While this is the case, I do think that I lied more before because I would just shut down. I wasn't a person. I was just like, I was a person, but I wasn't like, I don't know. It was just different, Like I was a person, but I was just there for others. I wasn't living authentically. I was just existing the way that I needed to exist to stay safe. And like that is the shittiest part for me. Is like I was just living because I had to, not living because I wanted to.
I was so uncomfortable with everything about who I was and how I was perceived. It led me to like having these emotional outbursts constantly. Like my emotions were like a constant roller coaster. I was basically like a BPD person.
I did.
With the way that
I have had a lot of emotional outbursts, especially when people are like disrespectful or what I perceive to be disrespectful, like misgendering or like actively dead naming me or just like I don't know. Sometimes people are just being shitty people, you know, and you can like tell. And I do have outbursts when that happens, and I would say I'm more prone to outbursts. I've kind of butchered a lot of the relationships with my family because now I'll feel like I'm like seeking justice for things that I didn't do in the past, and then like I'll just message people paragraphs and paragraphs, and I'll be like, "Fuck you for what you did when I was a kid." Like, I don't know. And like maybe that's not bad to do. Maybe that is bad to do. I don't really know. But me, I'm different now, and I'm more standing in myself than I used to, and I think that pisses a lot of people off.
I was behaving and feeling, um, because I was so isolated and confused, that I was basically lashing out 24/7, violently uncomfortable with this person that I was being seen as, and this reality, this prison that I created for myself. Um, and I get on HRT and it only exacerbates all that because I got totally sober then. And before, I was drinking and using the drugs to kind of isolate myself, to make it to where all those moments when I was angry at my ex or at my friends, or when I felt sad and isolated and wanted to have an outburst, I could just suppress it by using those drugs or drinking. Um, and I also had more emotional control because I wasn't going through a second puberty.
I kind of feel like I had more emotional control, but I also, my emotional control was just shutting down my emotions. So I don't know if I really had more control or if I like just had less range of emotions, right? Did I actually have more control over them, or did I just not feel them, you know?
I didn't have these
I
second
just turned them off.
sex hormones that make you specifically really emotionally volatile, prone to impulse, and irrational during that puberty. And so, I take away these tools that I was using for emotional regulation, when I was spending most of my time by myself. And then I replace that with a factor that was very destabilizing, which was hormones. And those hormones made me so emotional, like it was like a
I'm gonna
hundred
speed the video
emotions
up
a minute. And
to 1.5.
whereas before, I had trouble controlling my impulses because I was so uncomfortable
I only
with
have
how I
5%
was
left
being
on here.
perceived and how I was presenting and who I was being seen as, and having to do all the lies all the time. It was exhausting. I always had that ability to kind of take my prefrontal cortex and rein myself in. Like that willpower part of us that is definitely not the main driver of our behavior. The main driver of our behavior is mostly like in the back of the brain, not the front. I was able to reel myself in most of the time to prevent myself from doing anything too egregious. But without, those tools that I was using to isolate myself and to decompress, and with all of these new volatile emotions added to what was already a deeply volatile and uncomfortable and bad situation, it was basically just putting oil on a fire.
Yeah,
And that fire burned and it spread all over. And so
I
what I
feel
ended up
that.
doing was alienating most of my friends, cheating on the partner that I had, destroying those relationships in the process, just blowing them up.
Yeah,
Um,
same.
and becoming an all-around foolish and impulsive person. Like, I was blowing money nonstop, which is something I never did before. I never did that in my life. I was always pretty good with the money that I had. I was just running around all over the place, like self-harming and engaging in risky behaviors, lashing out at everyone.
I
I
do
went
this
nuts.
as well.
And by the end of it, I wanted to kill myself. My relationships were over. I lost a bunch of my friends. I felt like, it's over for me. It's done. But
It's over.
instead of killing myself, I chose a social suicide. I said, all right then, I'm going to detransition. There are clearly no benefits to me living this lie anymore. And it's already caused so much destruction that I wish I did this earlier. But if I'm going to kill myself over this, then I might as well commit a different kind of a
So they
suicide, which is a social
detransitioned.
suicide. And so that's what I did. I came out and I said I wasn't transgender. And there was backlash. There were people who tried to manipulate me back into it time and time again. I was pressured from all kinds of different sides. And
Wait, no, give me the video back.
I gave into it for a little bit, but ultimately, I've held strong, and I've came out and I've said this is how it is and this is who I am. You don't know me better than I know myself. And
Right.
you can take that or leave it. But I know that I'm happier living like this than I ever was living like that. And I deeply regret putting everyone that I knew through that whole
So
train wreck,
they regret transitioning.
putting myself through that.
I'm just gonna cut it off because like we don't really have time and my iPad's gonna die. So they regret detransitioning. And they do have bright sides of it. They're like, oh, I got some good art out of it, blah, blah, blah. But, like, overall, they feel like it was a bad decision. I feel like I've learned so much about myself that even if I do detransition, which is it's a possibility, I'm considering it. Because always, right, I'm just a person. I don't want to be a trans person. I just want to be a person. But I don't want to be a man either, is the thing. Anyways, the idea is that, like, even if I do detransition, I've learned so much about myself. I've, like, spread myself so far that, like, I don't know. I appreciate my transition as this, like, journey of self-exploration rather than as, like, I need to be a transgender. Like, that's not what happened. I just wanted to know myself better. And I feel like I do know myself better, but also I do kind of regret the life that I blew up to get to here. But I think, you know, ultimately in life, like, you're supposed to do hard things to experience personal growth, right? Like, this was a really fucking hard thing, and I got a lot of fucking personal growth. And there's been, like, hard times make strong men. And I'm becoming a strong man. That's what I got, bestie. Anyways, I'm out of here. I love you, and thank you for watching. Bye.